I absolutely love the way this looks. I think it just adds to it. This whole truck is a little over the top in a really fun way.
All right, guys, welcome to our used or abused review of a 2013 Ford Raptor. We wanted to do a review for those of you who are thinking about buying a used Raptor. We're concerned about what might be a problem with it. Are they reliable? What kind of gas mileage do they get? That kind of stuff. We are lucky enough, the subscribers of the channel will know that this channel has a Raptor. Thanks to Jake. This happens to be Jake's very own, and it is going to be perfect for this review. So let's get right into it. Jake, tell us about this truck.
First off, what's happening? This is my very own 2013 Ford Raptor. SVT, which is really important in my opinion because the new Raptors are not SVT. They're still really cool, but there's some major differences in the Gen 1. So besides the big 6.2 liter on this one, which is really awesome, and you only get to 6 on those. Now, I should say that some people are going to say, well, the Gen 2s have more horsepower. And you would be right, except on this one, because this one actually has a supercharger. But we'll get into that. But let me talk to you about what I love about the outside. This truck is so unique. Everything is bulged out and sticking out, and the fender flares. You know how sometimes people want a wider stance, so they just kick out the tires? Certainly an option you can do. The problem with that is that there's no fender flare on it. So you either got a bigger fender flare or you just leave them sticking out. Well, SVT flared out these fenders for us. And man, I think it looks awesome. So to me, it looks like a true wide body rather than just something I stuck extra offset rims on. So I really love that. That's the other thing about this truck I like is when they sized it up, like everything went with it. It's lifted over factory. The rims are not super sized, but the tires are. And these actually are the rims that only come with the 802A package. There's this really weird thing with Raptors where it's supposed to be all luxury package, but the 801As did not have some things like interior options like sunroof and a couple of features, and these beadlock capable rims. So these rims are not actual beadlock right out the gate. You buy a kit and then they're beadlock capable, which is really cool if you want that. But I love the look. I think they just look really awesome too. And then there's a few things about the 2013 that I absolutely wanted that did not come until 2013-14. So that's a big tip. If you want every feature that the Gen 1 Raptor had, get a 2013 or 14. You'll notice on the front, if you watch other videos, this is not the same as a stock Raptor, and yet it is. Because there's something most people don't know, and that is on these Fox Racing shocks, which I absolutely love, probably hard to see, but there is a ring on that with 3 different purchase points. And what that means is that you can change the height of the truck. It comes on the lowest purchase point. So I put this on the medium purchase point. I had to get new shock because the other one of them was blown. So medium purchase point, and what it does is it levels out the truck. If you put it on the top one, in my opinion, it's a little nose high, not the look I was going for. So that was really cool too. So we've done some mods on the outside, including these blinkers. This was just a marker light. This is now a sequential blinker, which is really cool. Probably saw it in one of the other videos. New puddle lights, also tied in a sequential blinker here, and they're blacked out. But that's pretty much it for the outside.
Let's talk about how wide this truck is. I know that's something that a lot of people have questions about. So looking here, how wide is this thing in real life?
These are really big parking spots. So if you have a big parking spot, you're going to be okay. But it is wider by, what is the total? Now I forget. Is it?
It's 8 inches.
Is it, or is it just under? Let's just say 8 because it's very close. So it's notably wider than a regular truck. And while we're up here, I want to point these out. These are actual functional heat exchange vents. These really work. And it drives me crazy on vehicles when they put the fake ones on for looks, but they don't work. And also, check this out. These also work. So you get flow through air vent. It's really cool. Functional heat exchange. I love it. Let me show you though, the real exciting part under the hood. So Joel mentioned that this comes with 411 stock horse. Now this has a Roush Supercharger, which is right there. And there's 2 different styles. There's a phase 1 and a phase 2. This is the phase 2 Supercharger, which means it goes from 411 horsepower all the way up to 590 horse and 590 torque. Kind of weird, but cool that they both lined up like that. And let me tell you, that makes a big difference. So we've got that. It comes with this cold air intake as well. And then this also has all the added Roush exhaust on it. But it's kind of neat in here because this is a cooler for, well, it's a reservoir for the coolant for the supercharger. And then they add this extra really awesome radiator right here in the front. Keep it nice and cool. We don't want toasty. Everything under this, the bolts for the shocks, the arms, everything underneath this thing is way beefed up. It is really genuinely a tough truck, not just in name only, but they really went through this thing and just strengthened everything. Some of it's so over the top, but it's the first production truck that I'm aware of that when they put the press release out, they showed this truck from the factory jumping. Where else are you going to find a truck like that? And we haven't jumped it yet, because you've seen the videos of people who don't know what they're doing, or they jump it in a way that it's nose down, and just it's not a super truck, but it's pretty dang awesome. That's about everything I can think of on the outside. We should jump on the inside though and take a look at that. Go for a ride. You want to go for a ride? Let's do it. Let's go for a ride. All right. So on the interior, this truck, these seats, I'm going to just start with the seats. These seats have so much bolster. I've never felt anything like it. And I'm not saying other vehicles don't have bolster, but this is like tucked right in. I mean, it's like this truck was made to be bounced around or something.
It's got to hold you for jumping.
It does, which, by the way, is a very, very awesome feature on this truck. But you go over bumps and things that normally would be jarring, and you don't even hardly notice it. It's just right over the top. So
yeah, there's a set of railroad tracks up here that when I lived here, I used to go into the other, that they had like a side lane where you could pull over, and people go into that side lane to get around the railroad tracks because they're so bad. And that was in like my 2500 Chevy or something, and it would jar you like crazy. This thing went over those railroad tracks yesterday, and I had to like look back. I asked Jake if they fixed the railroad tracks since I've lived here. They have not. That was all the Raptor. It was all the suspension on the Raptor.
It's so awesome. I absolutely love it. If you're wondering, is there really a difference between, and these are kind of our ultra expensive shocks. I'm not gonna mess with you. They're very, very expensive. When we changed out the front, we got a deal from Rock Auto. Those guys went from $1,300 down to like 600 and some change for the shocks. That's a big deal. We did the work. It was crazy. You can go back and look at it. I would watch that video if you're thinking about changing the shocks in this. Even if you're changing the purchase point, you can totally do it. There's just a few, everything is, whoop, there's a door. We don't want to hit that. The truck is wide. That's something you got to watch out for. So the shocks are phenomenal on this, and you get those through all years of the Gen 1 Raptor, and Gen 2, they have those as well. So that's not something you have to deal with. the 2012, there was a big change in the front differential where it went from just traction pretty much going to the wheel that slips to now the wheels that get traction. So that was a big thing I wanted. Also, this is the Ford My Touch 2. The one prior to this was horrific. If you look up reviews on it, you don't want it. And that came in the first gens. Or if you're very, 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 very patient, it works. Now, I'm not really not a fan of the Gen 2. The Gen 3s are really where Ford figured it out. But you can't get an upgrade in this one. Or can you? We may have figured out a way to upgrade this to the My Touch 3. However, once you get 2013, you at least get the 2, which is, it's not the greatest, but it's not bad. I will give it one mark on the disappointment side is they didn't put a heated steering wheel in it. Of all the things to not put in here, if you're going to do heated and cooled seats, you don't put a heated steering wheel in here? What the crap was that? I mean, you changed it, you put this awesome little stripe in here so I know when I'm jumping. That's, by the way, so when I'm turning a corner or jumping, I come back down and I actually know where to put the steering wheel so it's straight. We're going to pull in this parking lot real quick because I want to show you the turning ratio on this truck. Because as I said, that's one of the things I felt like I was going to lose in a full-size truck, no matter what. Like if you get a full-size truck, that's just what you get. You don't get a turning ratio. All right, so here is where the Ranger, it almost made this turn, but not quite. And I pulled up here and I'm like, there's no way that I'm going to be able to do a U-turn right here. I mean, if you look at this, would you say, sure, a full-size truck, you can do a turn? You'd say, no, but watch this. And I start turning like, oh, no way. Is it going to make it? Is it going to make it? It makes it with room to spare. Look at this. I'll just do a silhouette here. Oh, I'm too far over on this side. But that's okay, too, because we have a Raptor. We'll do one more circle, since that one technically did hit the curb. But is that amazing? That is incredible. Like, that is one of the most incredible parts about this truck. Now, if we were somewhat less civilized, we probably would have done some burnouts there. And that would have been really cool, except for 2 problems. Right in the middle of city limits is a bad place to do that. And I just got these tires like a day ago, or 2 days ago. So, oh, here's another speed bump. Oh, who cares about speed bumps? We don't care about speed bumps. I mean, it's like a pothole at best, kind of a feel. I love it. So, what else to say about this truck? Also, a reason I wanted to get a 2013, this was something I wasn't sure if it would be a big deal, but it's turned out to be something I'm really glad. That is a productivity screen they have right here. So this actually now is on this screen. I think it's a 4.3 inch, they call it productivity screen, but it did not come prior to 2013. Now there's some cool things on this I'll show you, besides the gas mileage gauge and some typical stuff that you'd find. The Raptor has something very unique, and again, you don't get it until you get to this 2013. Let's see here. This right here. This shows you approach angle, descent, pitch, roll, everything. It's so awesome when you're up in the woods rolling around. So make sure you don't get yourself into too much trouble. I mean, the Raptor is pretty incredible, and it'll shock you going into the woods when you put this thing in 4-wheel drive, and it has a locking differential. It's got a rear locking differential. All you gotta do is pull that. Oh, and we should show one more thing too. This is another thing 2013 does. If you put it in off-road mode, which you have to be stopped or going under a certain speed to do it slow, and then you put this on, oh, you know what? First, I forgot to disable that. There we go. Check that out. You get a front camera. So if you're trying to go through, for me, logs, or if you're in the desert and rocks or whatever, okay, this is a great opportunity to give you just a little taste of a supercharged Raptor right here. Normally, you got to put this in 4-wheel drive if you want to hook up, but we're going to just... That was past 60. We're going to slow it down a little bit. In this truck, I don't know about the standard Raptor. I think you can probably hook up, for the most part, through the power curve. But with the Phase 2 Roush Supercharger, there's no way. We've tried it. You will break loose every time it shifts all the way up through 60 or 70. It just keeps breaking loose, which is a little concerning when you're going that fast. So you have to put this in 4-wheel drive. If you put it in 4-wheel drive with the Supercharger, it still pulls it off to the side, but it's controllable, and it's a lot of fun. And Renee was like, it feels like you're in a ride. And I would say that's probably the best description. It feels like you went to the amusement park. And it's so nice. If you want to put a smile on your face, get in this truck and just go driving. But you got to use a little bit of the gas. with fuel economy, we might as well cover that because that's a big question with these. Is it 6.2 is a big engine, right? So what do we get for fuel mileage, gas mileage? Well, this one obviously has a supercharger. So if you look online, you'll find a lot of people, depending on how they drive, that will tell you they get anywhere from 8 miles a gallon up to 14. Sometimes you'll see people reporting even higher. I'm going to tell you that with the supercharger on here, if I drive between the city and highway and I'm not having fun, 13.4 miles per gallon. That's what I get. It's actually surprising because so many people with the supercharger are reporting like 8 miles per gallon. And I could actually get 2 miles per gallon depending on how I drive it. But if you drive it, and I don't drive boring, because if I have this, I want to be able to use it, and it puts a smile on your face. So I do that. I do not drive this like a grandma. No offense to grandmas. Grandmas are awesome, but grandmas probably are known to drive a little slow. So I still get 13.4. I don't know why this one seems to be that good. Now you might have an argument and say, well, do you actually get that if you test at the pump? Yes, I have tested this dozens and dozens of times at the pump versus what I have on the computer, and it's really close. It's usually 0.02, what is it, tenths of a gallon? Yeah, so it's, or miles per gallon. I don't know how that works, but the point, it's very close. I'll just put it that way. So maybe the computer says it's 13.6. Maybe I did really well, and the pump says it's 13.4, something like that. But it's relatively close, and so consistently we get about 13.4. So I don't think it's that bad. I really like it. What are your impressions as a passenger, Joel, or driver? Because you drove it a little bit.
I did. I got to drive it a little bit off-road. The first time I came up here, Jake didn't let me drive it, and I got back to Colorado, and he was like, "Hey, how did you like the Raptor?" I'm like, "I was great sitting in it," and I think it's just because he loves it so much.
It was an oversight. I was very excited to drive it. It wasn't on purpose. I just didn't realize that he hadn't got to take the wheel.
Yeah, but I got to drive it off-road. Some of the B-roll that you see in this video we were doing yesterday, and I got to drive it there, and oh my gosh, this is a fun truck. It has a crap ton of power. It puts it down very, very well. It's really easy to drive though. It's not normally you drive something with 590 horsepower. I've driven a lot of sports cars that have 400, 500, 600 horsepower, and that's where I learned that there is such a thing as too much horsepower, because they kick out when you shift, and the ground's a little bit wet, and so they slip, and it's just ridiculous. It's extremely irritating, and it just makes it so it's not any fun. So I thought that this thing with 590 horsepower, now granted it probably outweighs those sports cars 2 to 1, but it's not. I don't feel like it's
what, 60? It's almost 6,500 pounds.
Yeah, it's a big girl, but it doesn't feel overpowered, and I don't want you to think that means that it doesn't have a ton of power, because it does have a ton, and we'll splice in the 0 to 60 run we tried to do in this thing a little while back. You go watch that video here, but here's the clip of us running. Holy crap! Oh my god!
60.
This thing's sliding sideways as it's taken off in that clip, and that's even in 4-wheel drive. So it has tons of power, but it's all usable power. So I really liked it. I really enjoyed the way that it drove off-road. The suspension is incredible. It just soaked up all of the bumps and the ruts and the logs that we were going over and everything. It didn't care. That, by the way, is why the Raptor's so dirty right now, because we were out having fun with it yesterday.
We're using it for the way Raptors are supposed to be used. You could throw in a clip, actually if you want right now, that super one going through the giant mud puddle.
There you go.
Because we don't play around. We play around, but we use the truck for what it's for. Why would you buy all this and never use it? I don't get it. I don't understand that. We do though, and it's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. We like to use them. So from a passenger standpoint, it's a great truck. It's great fun to drive. I really liked it. From a passenger standpoint, it's very comfortable. There's lots of room. It doesn't feel like I'm not being jerked around in the truck when he drives, although I'm sure you noticed on the camera when he hit the accelerator when we were on the freeway just a minute ago, it jerked us back. So it can jerk you around, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that it doesn't have to when you drive it. You can drive it super smooth.
It's a very refined dinosaur.
Absolutely.
Like if it was going to eat you, it would be like, let's have a cup of tea first, and we'll drink it with our pinky up. And then it will devour you. And we'll go Raptorize the neighborhoods and the countryside.
Exactly.
Those are fine times.
So, Jake, I'm sure that a lot of the viewers are curious, because I know I would be, and I know we talked about it a lot before you bought this. What kind of reliability has this thing got? I know we've got some videos linked of stuff that you've had to do to it, but from an overall reliability standpoint, we got, what, 139,000 miles on this?
Yep.
It's had its supercharger for how many miles? About 20,000 miles?
It's actually pushing, so that's something, it's had it for about 50,000, roughly, the supercharger. I haven't had it that long. I bought it towards the beginning of the year. So from a reliability standpoint, I do have a few things to go over, just to give you a heads up. Because if you're going to buy a used one of these, which obviously if you're buying a Gen 1, unless you find some really extraordinary rare one, which they're out there, where somebody says, I've seen them where I've got like 8,000 miles, 6,000 miles. But even then, it's been sitting a lot.
Yeah, it's going to have time wear on it, even though it doesn't have mileage wear.
Seals, things like that. Sometimes that's actually even worse, just sitting. In fact, I would argue a lot of times it is worse, to a point, right? So there's a few things that start creeping up around 100,000 miles with these. And I'm going to start out with the stock Raptor. No supercharger, because that changes a lot about what you need to do and don't do with this. So around 100,000 miles, that's where your shocks are going to start wearing out. And they're very expensive. If you're going to take the Ford dealer, it's at least a couple grand. That's just a guarantee for that's just the front or the back, right? So you're going to need to be aware of that. Also, with this particular engine, the 6.2, if you go do some research and you look at the designers of this, the engineers, they will tell you their goal was to make this one a bulletproof engine. Now, you'll find it not just in the Raptors, it's in the, was it the 350s, 250s, 450s, the 450s. I think you can get it in the 350s, and maybe the 250s is an option, but I'm not positive it is. But it's a work engine. Now, when they put it in here, they did some tuning to get it up to that 411 horsepower. And again, we've taken it, it's way past that. But let's just talk about that. There's only one weakness that I have found and we have found with this 6.2, and that's the valve springs. And it's really weird because it doesn't happen all the time, but you can get a broken valve spring on this. I had a broken valve spring, and you can look them up, you can find them. And it's always usually just one. It doesn't usually progress to more than one, although I'm a little bit nervous about having another one break because I don't want having valves and pistons strike. They don't get along when they touch. There's no touching in this relationship. So I was super fortunate in that when the valve spring broke, it was the top portion of it, which also seems to be where they break. And if you look at those springs, they sort of taper in. And my theory is that that's why it breaks right there. But it's actually a little bit of a blessing in disguise, because it's enough to keep the valve from striking the piston, because these engines have so much chamber in there for combustion that there's a little more clearance than normal. But not always. You see some guys where it broke and it hit the engine. So that is the one downside to this. And you know what the weird thing is? It happened to guys at 70,000. I saw one at like 30 or 40, which is really weird, and then sometimes 200. Now, aside from that, this 6.2 will go several hundred thousand. I mean like 300,000. You'll find forums all day long with people saying, just hit 300,000 with mine, it's going strong. So they really do have a long life expectancy, but that is the one part that I would say on the engine. Then you've got the shock. That's just a normal maintenance though. Shocks wear out. You got to factor that in. But if you're buying one and it hasn't been changed, be aware of it.
And Jake, what about because this has the Roush package on it? Did Roush up the rev limiter? Did they change? What did they change on the tune, and did that contribute to your springs?
So that is a very interesting question that we have been trying to figure out. I have contacted Roush several times, probably more than they would like. They're a great company, though. Those guys have always been awesome. I just want to give a shout out to those. I mean, the products that they put out they have a good reputation, phenomenal actually, for a reason. So they did not change, according to Roush, the rev limit on this truck, which is really good, because we were wondering, are we getting a floating valve? Is it because maybe with the supercharger there was the rev limit got changed, and they've said, in fact, they said, don't touch it, don't change the rev limit. They didn't mess with that, so we don't believe that it's contributed to that. Also, they've had no widespread problems with it. Now I say widespread because it doesn't mean they're unaware of that as a problem, but it doesn't seem to be connected to the supercharger. It only seems to be connected to just the valve springs in the 6.2 in general. So they didn't change anything. As far as reliability, well, pinion seals, you know, if you're putting that much power through this whole system, I'm going to say one thing. It's a really good thing that everything on this Raptor is beefed up, because if this was on a standard F-150, and those are cool trucks too. So this is nothing against them. They're just not overbuilt like this. Because with this Supercharger on here, phase 2, even with everything over the top, I'm sure we're going to have to change the transmission out at some point. We know that's coming. We changed the transmission fluid when I got it. It was a little burnt. There was particles in there on the slip plates, or the clutch plates. Also, rear pinion seal. My mechanic's like, do they sell those in 12 packs? You should just buy a 12 pack with the Supercharger. So there are some things that you're going to have to do if you're going to crank the horsepower. Check it out. That's the Gen 2 Raptor. There we go. That's awesome.
All right, Jake. So these used or abused reviews come down to, is it used or is it abused? In other words, if it's been abused, it's one that you don't want. You would not be interested in having it. If it's used, then it's a good used buy, even though you can't buy brand new or don't want to buy brand new in this case because you can't get the Gen 1, can't get the SVT. What do you think? Is this used or abused? Would you buy it again if you had the opportunity?
Yeah, I would. And let me put just a couple words on that. Number one, if you're going to buy a Raptor, it's built literally to take abuse, to take a beating. So you don't have to worry quite as much about somebody not being nice to you. Now, they could have taken out jumping and really screwed something up, but you could take this thing in and pound it on those roads where a normal truck, you're going to see a lot of wearing out of parts. Not with the Raptor. So that gives you a little bit of leeway there. Awesome. The expected wear points like transmission, I think the transmission is probably a little more worn than I would hope, but we were willing to take that risk. So I would say this was not abused. I'd say it's used. I absolutely would buy it again. I think it's phenomenal. I love it. I love it.
Fantastic. All right, guys. Well, there you go. There's your used or abused review for a 2013 Gen 1 Ford Raptor. Give us a like if you enjoyed the video. Follow us on, let's see, Mischief for All on Instagram. You get behind the scenes pictures and sneak peeks on stuff that we're working on for projects and stuff like that, so follow us there. And if you like what we're doing, subscribe, hit that notification bell. I gotta have the bell, then you know when we're hanging out. And yeah, we love you.
I love it. And since Uncle Jake's in the truck, you know how we're closing. We're gonna take you out. Come on a little closer. We're gonna take you out with the fist bump of friendship. Wow!